This is sometimes a hot topic, the English spelling system. It gets a bad reputation for being thought of as chaotic, unorganized, not following rules, impossible to figure out. I hope to show you another side to our English spelling system in this lecture. There is a lot of systematicity to our alphabetic orthography, and we'll go through some of the different components of that so that you can be the best possible help to your future clients who are struggling with written language disorders. Written language disorders are as important to address, if not more important to address, as spoken language. The orthography of our English spelling system is alphabetic. And development of this alphabetic type orthography in lots of languages across the globe are probably some of the most important, impactful human achievements in history. It gives us the ability to write a limitless number of ideas, thoughts, opinions. It's longer lasting than speech production. Speech, you say it, it disappears. But writing was something more impactful and longer lasting. Now with that, the challenges of our English alphabetic orthography are numerous, but it does have a lot more systematicity than it might look like at first glance. There is a lot of structure, embedded rules, and ways to make this alphabetic orthography more accessible to students that you work with who have written language difficulties. The phonotactic rules of our English orthography, so let's trace that back for just a sec. We have the 5 components of language: phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. Under phonology, we have suprasegmentals, and we have these phonotactic rules. The phonotactic rules are what govern the ways that speech sounds can go together to form words, and in the same manner governs the ways that our alphabetic orthographic notational system spells words. So when you look at this little poem, you can almost read it out loud even though it's not real words, but that's because it follows our English orthographic phonotactic rules. The positional constraints of phonemes are followed, and the amount of sounds in a cluster are followed. It adheres to those general rules of English language, so it is possible to read this even though it's just full of non-words. Had they taken these words and had some of the words start with an XLTMO, that would not obviously follow the phonotactic rules of the English language and would be impossible to read. The challenge with our English spelling system sometimes is that while it is an alphabetic orthography, it's not a perfect alphabetic orthography. If it was a perfect alphabetic orthography, every symbol in our alphabet or letter would correspond to exactly one sound and one sound only. We know in our language there are letters in our alphabet that stand for multiple sounds, and certainly letter combinations that can make lots of different sounds even though the same letter combination is used. In this way, it's not a perfect alphabetic orthography, it's what we call morphophonemic. English spelling is as much based on meaning of the words as it is based on sound-symbol correspondence. Let's look at a few examples. Loved, hated, past. We have the "da" in loved at the end, the "id" in hated, and a "ta" sound in past. All of those, though, are the past tense morpheme ed, right? For children to become accurate spellers, at some point they have to be able to ignore what it sounds like and have knowledge of the past tense morpheme ed to be able to spell these words correctly. If they spelled everything like it sounded, these words would be spelled loved, hatid, and past, right? And it would totally lose the meaning component. So that's where some of the organization and systematicity comes in to our English spelling system. that sometimes doesn't get credit for being an organized system. Another example I like is magic and magician. If I ask a child to spell the word magic, and they spell it correctly, M-A-G-I-C, and then I say, spell magician, and they spell it like it sounds, M-A-G-I-S-H-U-N, let's say. There could be a lot of options for that. They're not using their knowledge of the root word magic in magician. If they know those two words are related, then they can use that knowledge to spell magic as a component of magician, and then to add in the suffix at the end of magician, which again, they might need help getting the correct suffix, but we love it when we see that they have that relational aspect clear in their spellings. When they don't have that relational aspect clearly conveyed in their spellings at a developmentally appropriate level, then that gives us something to work on that can make a big impact in their spelling. Here's another example of why we can't just spell everything the way it sounds. If we did, we would have different spellings for different regions of the country based on dialect, different cultural dialects. There would be no consistency in our spellings. We have to have the meaning component represented. And this really started to come into play when dictionaries started to be developed and things started to be written down in a consistent manner for spellings. And at those times, a lot of those decisions were made as far as which symbols are going to represent the different words and how meaning would be represented. Let's pull apart an example of how to walk through a word in terms of all of the aspects of language that can help us understand its spelling and its form, the knowledge that we need to have in order to be able to spell a particular word correctly. And we're going to look at the word commitment. So this word has some systematic rule-based elements and gives us an opportunity to look at a word that has more than one morpheme. So the aspects of language that we want to think about when we're trying to figure out how this word is spelled and why it's spelled the way it is, we want to think about its syntax, or part of speech basically, its morphology, how many morphemes and what do those mean, its semantics, the overall meaning of the word or multiple meanings, the orthography, what are the spelling rules being followed in the spelling of the word commitment, and then its phonological components, what phonemes are in the word. So for syntax, it's a noun. The suffix ment marks it as a noun. For morphology, there are 3 morphemes in commitment. It's a little tricky because you might at first glance think there are just 2, commit and ment. But it's actually that come is the Latin prefix meaning with. Mit is the root of this word. It's a Latin root meaning send. And then again, the ment at the end is a suffix that marks a noun. There's more than one meaning: a promise, obligation, responsibility, the act of restricting or confining a person. And the way that it's used in the meaning of the word depends on the context and how the person is using it. The orthographic components of the word commitment, the spelling rules, we see sometimes in words there's a double consonant. There are actually usually spelling rules that govern when there's doubling of a consonant at a syllable juncture versus not. In this instance, the double M results from the juncture of the prefix and the root, but there's not doubling of the T before ment, right? So why is that? That's because a suffix that begins with a consonant does not require doubling of the consonant that precedes it. So there's all kinds of rules and structural elements. And it's not necessary to have memorized all of the possible spelling rules. What is necessary is to be able to walk through the word, analyze it, identify what structure is present in the word, and then you can be most helpful to the folks that you're serving in terms of helping them understand the English spelling system and develop stronger skills. Also under orthographic, one of the other components here is like, why is it a C at the beginning, not a K? And it would be okay if it was a K, but it's because of the Latin prefix meaning with, right? So the fact that it's C O-M instead of K-O-M, is based on meaning of that first component of the word. All three written syllables are closed type, and that means they have a consonant, vowel, consonant structure. C-O-M, consonant, vowel, consonant. M-I-T, same thing. Mint, same thing, but with two consonants at the end. Under phonological, 3 syllables stress on the root mit, and there are 9 different phonemes. The first vowel is spoken as a schwa, unstressed a. And although there are the 2 M's in the spelling, we don't say the M sound twice. It's only one phoneme if we phonetically transcribe the word commitment. So that's a lot of structure in that word that usually just kind of gets overlooked, glossed over, and we don't think about it too much. We spell the word and we go on. But what I want you to realize is that there really is, just again, a lot of systematicity, rule-based structure in English spelling. We're just not always aware in the moment of what those rules are. But when we look deeper, understanding to some extent that structure is going to really help you and is pretty necessary as a speech language pathologist, language expert in written and spoken language. Although again, you don't have to have all of these memorized. You need some resources and you need to understand the premise of walking through a word. Pulling this together, the 5 different things that govern English spelling in our alphabetic orthography. The word origin and history. On the previous slide, we looked at some of the Latin roots. The phoneme-grapheme correspondences. Those do govern spellings, but again, it's not 100% predictable alphabetic orthography. The positional constraints, effect of the position of a phoneme on its spelling within a word. For example, on commitment, well, it really could have been a C or a K at the beginning of that word, and it's a C because that reflects the meaning of the morpheme come. It's not ever going to be a CK at the initial position. A CK isn't used in the initial position to represent the cut. That's a positional constraint. So you don't really have to wrestle with that one. CKs happen in medial and final positions, but not at the start. The patterns, the letter sequence, the use of doubling, and then the morphology. How many morphemes? What are the meanings of those morphemes? And how do those morphemes inflect or derive depending on the form of the word that may or may not impact spelling. So these 5 things are good to have a general familiarity with, that they mean something, and you can look up more information when you need to, when you're kind of trying to figure out what kind of sense for spelling this particular word can I make of it. I'll never say that our spelling system is easy, but I will say that it's more organized than it gets credit for. And one of the reasons that it is not easy is this quote here. When we teach English, we're not teaching 1, but at least 4 languages. English isn't crazy, but it's multi-layered and complex. English words reflect their origins by having their own structure and phonology. Here are a few examples of the origins of some words that you might know or might not be as familiar with. Fire, fireworks. The Latin-based words, explosive, ignition. The Greek-based words, pyrotechnics. We just have a lot of different elements in the English language across different languages. French for one, to unique, to uniform, to monochrome. This evolved across time. We didn't end up with the spelling system that we have in one fell swoop. The pronunciation of words changed between 14th century and modern times. Dictionaries were standardized with spellings and pronunciation in the 1800s. So once dictionaries standardized the spellings and the pronunciations, that's where it really started to sort out a bit. For example, silent E was used to represent a vocalized inflection up until the 16th century, so it wasn't silent. In the 16th century, many spelling conventions were adopted, such as the silent E to mark soft C and G, or to keep words from looking like plurals. I'm fascinated by our spelling system, and I like watching spelling bees sometimes. And you can totally tell now why the people in the spelling bees often ask what language did the word come from, because that's going to give them insight into the spelling.